What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the EPM show. I am your co-host, Chad Pyke. This is all things enterprise performance management, and we're here to give you an unfair career advantage. I am pumped for you to check out today's episode. We have Ryan DuBiel in the house. He is the Global Anaplan Practice Lead at Slalom Consulting. And what's interesting about Ryan is he comes from a non-traditional background when you think about EPM, and he's going to share some really great insights on how to become an elite consultant. Some of the stuff he's going to talk about today that you'll hear is the importance of having a pathological curiosity and the courage to ask the dumb question, where the true value of Anaplan really is, and how to unlock that for your organization and for your clients. And he's got a really hot take on what he calls augmented intelligence, which is an interesting perspective on AI and machine learning. I can't wait for you to hear that one. And 3 key fundamentals to becoming an elite consultant. And if you work for a customer, I actually want you to tune in here, because these fundamentals apply to being a great internal consultant and influencer in your organization as well. And then lastly, the importance of strong beliefs, loosely held, and how those can be a differentiator for you early on in your career. Check it out.
This is Blake Bozarth, your host, Chad Pyke, co-host. Chad, what's going on?
Not much, man. I'm excited for this one.
Me as well. We got Ryan DuBiel here today from Slalom. Ryan, thanks so much for being a part of the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
So we got to hit you with our patented question. You know the drill. You and your career in 60 seconds, whatever you want to share. Take a run.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off on a probably unusual note. So I came out of undergrad with an English degree, then went into a sort of law degree, MBA hybrid, but went the business route side of things. So started my career, oil and gas industry, a pretty common background to what you see a lot of the EPM space, FP&A analyst, FP&A supervisor, and moved into more kind of strategic planning roles and actually IT strategy within oil and gas. Came a point in time where I realized things were ready for a change, really had my eye on consulting. Through a number of folks in my network, found my way to Slalom. They asked me if I'd heard of this thing called Anaplan. I said, absolutely not. But did a little bit of research, sat in on a demo, shout out to my guy, Peter Podine, who was working to set Slalom up back in the day. And I said, if this thing does half of what he just promised, I'm in.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for that. So we normally like to also ask a fun follow-up question here, just kind of get to know you a little bit. If you could take an all-expense-paid trip anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Oh, man, that's tough. I've been dying to get out to Australia or New Zealand recently. I've been working like crazy to get a business reason out there. But if not, I'd love to go out to Australia, New Zealand, maybe hit up a little bit of Fiji and do a little trip there. Just the natural beauty and everything like that. It's right up my alley. My family loves that kind of stuff. So getting out there, you see the landscapes, and it's just unreal. So would love to find a way out there.
That's awesome. You a hiker, or would you scuba dive in Australia?
So scuba's on the list of things to do. I've got 2 young boys at home. So maybe once they're a little bit older, we'll do kind of like a little family diving thing, but hikes for sure are right. If there's a trail, if we can get up there, my wife and I usually tackle one.
So I was actually one of 2 boys, and my dad got both of us certified at like 10, 11 years old, or as soon as we could. And it's a fun guys trip thing. So that's
for sure. My boys are 5 and 3, so I'm right around the corner. It'll be here before we know it.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. I got a 5 and 3-year-old home too, so we got something else in common there. We're excited for this. One of the things I definitely want to dive into more with you, Ryan, is on that non-traditional background and how you parlayed that into such a successful career in a more technical space, right? So talk us through that a little bit. What did it look like to the genesis behind kind of making that pivot? And what advice would you have for people who may also come from a non-traditional background in terms of succeeding in a space like EPM?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, coming out of undergrad with an English degree, trying to go into FP&A, they were kind of like, what's going on? But I think there were 2 things that helped me along the way. One was a pathological curiosity, constantly trying to understand what's out there, doing some reading, just going down rabbit holes and learning about topics. And then second is, if you spend any time around me, I'm usually not afraid to ask the dumb question. So really just being able to raise my hand and say, like, look, this is new to me. I want to learn more, but you're going to have to break down this whole P&L thing, right? I'm mostly joking. Coming out of business school, I had a little bit of background, but generally always be the one to say, hey, Can you break that down for me? Because I want to learn more about this.
One of the things that we talk about a lot when it comes to career growth and development is humble confidence. Mm-hmm. And so it's that humility to ask kind of that dumb question, but then also the confidence to say, hey, I know I can figure anything out. So hand it to me and I'll be the one to ask the question. I love that. That is definitely a catalyst for growth. And it makes sense why you are where you are. That insatiable curiosity can take you a long way.
Absolutely. Well, and over the course of expanding our partnership and practice here at Slalom, we've made big investments in things like Correlation One and some of the other avenues that provide folks opportunities to join this space from non-traditional backgrounds. I ask those folks to lean into it as a strength rather than a weakness or a deficiency, because they see problems and solutions from completely different angles. We've got a consultant on our team who came from adult education, and the way she can look at a problem and communicate it simply and break it down and help folks see things from a new way is incredible. But she wasn't a career consultant before coming onto the team.
And I love that term, pathological curiosity.
There you go.
That's awesome.
There you go.
That's awesome. But I think that speaks volumes to what's like, that's a trait that serves you so well across any field, I would say, but especially when you're thinking about a space like EPM, that's a trait that serves you extremely well. Just having that curiosity that's insatiable to figure out, okay, why does it work this way? Mm-hmm. And then what if we did this? How would that change things? I can see that fueling a model builder so well. So talk to us more about your career path, Ryan, and getting into Anaplan, and then what did it look like helping, as I understand it, helping stand up the practice at Slalom, which is now one of the top partners for Anaplan. But talk to us that genesis of getting into Anaplan and then helping stand up the practice.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, started my career in oil and gas industry, had a few FP&A roles, moved into a planning type of role. And one of my last assignments was internal consulting within ExxonMobil. And I wanted to continue down that path through my network, found my way to Slalom, and really just started to help them assess the opportunity at hand with Anaplan. And so went through, did my model builder certification, landed on one of our first projects within Slalom, and worked with an incredible architect who helped us come in and guide us from Anaplan's professional services team. But it was constantly just, asking those questions, understanding the technology, but doing so, I think, from a background that allowed me to have a lot of empathy with the people we were building solutions for. By the time I had gotten to Slalom, I had built a headcount plan. I had sent that file and received one back that was a version 6 final Ryan edits. So I understood the pain points that people were trying to solve and the processes that were there. And so as I was coming up the technical learning curve, I think that helped to really ask the right questions around the user, what they wanted, and build solutions that were going to be helpful.
You talked a little bit there about empathy and having an understanding for the challenges that your clients are trying to solve. What are y'all doing to ensure that your consultants are still leading with empathy today?
We think about the solutions that we develop as a product. It's not just a planning tool. This is something that's going to have a direct impact on the day-to-day life of the people who are going to use it within these organizations. And so we really try to understand that process. We'll say we have a process-led, technology-enabled sort of solution ethos. So just having a very clear understanding. Sometimes it's storyboarding, sometimes it's process maps, but just understanding exactly what information that person needs at their fingertips and what they're going to do with it allows us to kind of prototype and work through wireframes as we're going through that process. But we think about 3 things as we're doing this. We think about people, we think about the process, and we think about the technology. None of them are objectively easy to get right, but I can tell you of the 3, technology is the most simple part. So we've got folks that are trying to understand who's going to be using the tool, what they use it for, and what the business process is they're really trying to be a part of as we design the solution.
So, Ryan, I know you have some thoughts around the value that technology can bring to an organization. How would you describe that?
A lot of my time recently has been talking to, executives and leaders across this space that are trying to wrestle with the business value of making investments in their Anaplan environments and expanding of their use cases of the services required to implement these solutions. And the conversations I'm having with them, and this is Ryan's 2 cents on this, but Anaplan as a platform is not in and of itself going to drive business value. what it does is it unlocks the ability to drive business value. It allows our users to take the right information in the hands of the right people at the right time to make decisions that are going to take their business to the next level. Right now, what we see at a macro level is a shrinking of the cycles, if nothing else, of planning. It was annual or semi-annual. The hot new thing a couple of years ago was to move to quarterly. We have a ton of clients that are looking at things on a weekly, sometimes daily basis now, and allowing them to be able to do those revs in an efficient manner across multiple scenarios is what gives the people the information they need to then go unlock the business value.
That's so good. I also make sure we say that again. You're basically saying, hey, the platform itself doesn't create value. Right. It can unlock value though. And so there's a lot of power in that platform. And you want to make sure you choose the right one. It does matter, but it's not that. It's an enabler. It truly is an enabler that allows you to unlock value. It's more about, do you have the right people that are developed in the right ways and the right processes in place to really harness that technology?
Exactly really right. I get a lot of questions about AI, and I say, yeah, AI is really important, but it's not actually artificial intelligence. I call it augmented intelligence, right? It's using that enabler to let your people spend their time and effort and brain power on the tasks that are going to unlock that business value. And just like the industrial revolution took us from manual labor to steam or engine power, combustible engines, like this technology has the chance to be a force multiplier for what your teams are doing as you wrestle with these questions that may require you to pivot your business on a dime.
No wonder Slalom is crushing it. I mean, hearing you talk, like you described this so well in terms of the value, the business value, and the way to think about it. Chad, I'll let you jump in.
It reminds me a lot, actually, what a mutual friend of ours that we've talked about off the show, but Ray Corbello, when we had him on the show, he said something very similar, and that leaders can make mistakes when they're trying to drive transformation, when they lead with technology, when really we need to lead with people, and then we need to lead with process. And so kind of in that vein, Ryan, what would you say is maybe a big obstacle for some of the leaders that maybe you might work with? Because I'm sure it's easy to think, well, if we implement this technology, then it'll make our lives better. Like, how do you approach that leader and influence and help them understand, maybe we need to reframe this and think about our people and our process first while the technology is still important? Can you maybe dive in a little further there?
Exactly. I think one thing that works in our favor is that sort of the SaaS and sort of space has been around long enough where most business leaders have seen an effort fail. And you can talk about why that is. It's rarely, sometimes it's the technology, but it's usually not the case. It's enablement, it's adoption, it's buy-in across the organization. And so, when I'm having conversations with business leaders, it's about defining the what's in it for the organization. Picking on Anaplan in particular, I think they do a great job with that concept of like a triple metric, where you need to be able to say for the end users, for that management team, and for the executive management team, what's in it for me? How is this going to help drive our business forward to get that buy-in and to get people all kind of swimming in the same direction when we roll this out? Because there are a lot of folks who are going to say, you can pry my spreadsheet out of my cold, dead hands. And until they understand what the value prop is and how you're going to help them, I think you really have some obstacles you have to get around.
That's really good. And that reminds me of another guest we had on recently, Julian Lucicher from Pigment, talking about the difference between push versus pull. And so you have some people that you're going to spend 7 hours of their day model building. You're going to have others that encounter it every now and then, or a small portion of their day. And you have to be able to give them a reason to want to change. And the more that it's a pull into it versus, hey, you have to do this, the better it is. But that starts with good change management principles, designing processes right, and then having the tool designed in a way that makes it easy to use and makes it something that's actually enjoyable for them to use. So I love that. Hey, I want to come back to something else you mentioned before, Ryan, around going from quarterly to monthly, weekly. Do you see that as a growing trend in terms of just like frequency that you from the clients that you're working with? And then how would you describe, I guess, where you see dynamic connected planning really moving in the future?
So without a doubt, I mean, if nothing else, I would say the questions that come from executives that say, what are we going to do if this happens, come down so much more now than they did 2 years ago. And so I was sitting on a client call this morning, And we were talking about how they can run these different scenarios and see what risks and opportunities that they put into their sales forecast, how that impact's going to hit the P&L. And one of my favorite parts of my week is sitting there watching the client say, oh my God, you have no idea how much time this is going to save me to be able to answer these questions and feed the executive leadership teams. Your official forecast periods may remain at monthly, but as you're sort of trying to course correct, trying to understand what market fluctuations or interest rate guidance may mean on your business and how that can impact your top or bottom line, I think having the ability to do those cycles on sometimes a daily or weekly basis is absolutely key.
You've had your own experience coming up as a model builder, figuring this out technically. A lot of our audience is that's where they are right now. Maybe on the junior side, we have a lot in the middle somewhere. How would you advise somebody who's looking to grow their career? And maybe one way to think of it, Ryan, is what do you think separates the most successful consultants and professionals in this space?
Yeah, I look at it as three legs of a stool in kind of what we do. You've got the technical learning curve. I think most people are able to surmount that to a certain level. Now, not everyone's going to want to be a master anaplanner or a foremost expert, but your ability to migrate and use the tool, or I would say navigate and use the tool, is table stakes. The other piece is the consultative aspect. It's being a great listener, but someone who has a point of view and can be convincing to see folks or to challenge them to come along to your point of view. I honestly think the last and most important thing and the lowest hanging fruit for a lot of folks in the environment is to really take the time to learn about the functional processes that your clients are going through. If you're working on a merch plan with a retailer and they start talking about stockouts or markdowns on excess inventory, and you don't know what that means, that's okay the first time. But take that, research it, understand what some of the key language are, how these processes work and how they connect, I think can make you more effective than anything else, because then you become an advisor. You become a thought partner to the client. You're not just saying, okay, what do you want your dashboard to look like and what modules need to sit behind that to make it happen?
That kind of goes back to your point at the very beginning around the pathological curiosity and being willing to ask the dumb questions, right?
I want to call on that point of view. Point that you made too is like willingness to have points of view. That's so huge, especially like we look at that as one of the biggest accelerants to somebody earlier in their career is thinking about, hey, what are my points of view? If it has to do with the way you approach architecting a model or the way you approach a solution, if it has to do with the particular industry that you're in, do you have certain industry points of view that you're passionate about? That in and of itself, getting clarity on what your POVs are, and then being winsome yet passionate about how you talk about them, it's such an opportunity to stand out, because a lot of people don't do that well. Somebody who's naturally have very strong points of view, the downside risk is that they can sometimes become across as very arrogant and know-it-all about their point of view, right? But the rest of the population typically that just doesn't necessarily advocate for something very passionately, but it's a huge opportunity to have a nuanced point of view about something. It doesn't have to be an original thought, but it's something that not as commonly talked about or espoused in whatever context that you're in. Maybe you've heard a podcast on something, you read an industry article, but to be able to bring that into the space that you're in your firm, into your clients, it's a huge way to actually differentiate yourself and stand out. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ryan, in terms of how that's impacted you and your career?
100%. A lot of the way I spend my time interacting with clients today is more in advisory engagements. And I am very upfront to say, hey, I'm coming in with a hypothesis, but what these are, they're strong beliefs loosely held, right? There are a lot of idiosyncrasies about your situation, your business that can change my mind. But based on all the data points I've seen across my career, all the clients I've worked with, this to me is what leading practice looks like. Now let's apply that to your situation and get down to it. And so I think it's just a matter of taking the time to see how different things work, the pros and cons of those models, and see what's been successful, what hasn't been successful in the situations that make those outcomes different.
I can imagine approaching a client like that is so effective because it's very disarming almost. I'm very open to reason. We're going to make this a really good conversation. Given our experience, we have these, like you said, strong beliefs loosely held, but I think that sounds like it just opens up such a door to have really honest, but fruitful conversations without, to your point, Blake, coming across as arrogant if you're holding something too tightly, but then not passive and disengaged, because you do have a position and you're going to advocate for it, but you're also open to reason.
And that's where the value comes. So if you're listening to this, be willing to have strong beliefs. What are your strong beliefs? And then practice articulating that. You can start in a safe space with some peers, but then practice articulating what does it look like owning your voice around those points of view, because it really will set you apart. And it's really a great chance to influence better outcomes for your clients, for your firm. So love that. Brian, this has been a blast, man. Thanks so much for being a part of this show. Before we let you go, we want to hit you with one of our closing questions, and that is, do you have any kind of BHAG for yourself personally? Anything you're going after these days, big, hairy, audacious goal that you're trying to accomplish?
We've got some ambitious goals within Slalom. We've been incredibly fortunate, and we've got an incredible team that's received some recent recognition with Anaplan. We want to continue that momentum and continue to build in the space. But for me personally, I've got some milestones out there, but for me, it's all about 1% better than yesterday. I forget the attribution, but I came across this idea and I was like, man, this is insane. So I'm just always trying to reflect and learn and do something a little bit better tomorrow than I did today. So that's me.
Dude, I love that. And for those of you who know that reference, James Clear talks about that. If you get 1% better each day, which is not an impossible thing if you think about it, you end up 37 times better by the end of the year. That's the math behind that. You guys can model that in your Anaplan models, make sure I'm right. But I love that, Ryan. Good stuff. This has been a blast. Where can people look you up if they want to find you?
Definitely find me on LinkedIn. Not a big social media guy otherwise, but happy to connect in LinkedIn. If you ever find yourself in Charleston, South Carolina, hit me up. Take you to lunch. We'll get out on the water, do something fun. But LinkedIn's the best place to start.
Sounds like a blast, man.
Ryan,
all right.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Wherever you're consuming this, if it's YouTube, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed. We have a lot more amazing guests on the way, a lot more great content. We're doing our best to bring you value and have fun while we do it. We really want this to be a career advantage, listening to this show, and we want you to enjoy it. So it means a lot. Make sure you're subscribed for what's to come. And also, if you're up for it, it would mean a lot if you leave us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, whatever platform you're on. That really helps, and it gets us fired up when we see those. So I appreciate you guys. Find us on LinkedIn. I'm Blake Bozarth, my co-host Chad Pyke with a Y. Would love to connect with you there. Have an awesome day. See you next time. Peace.